Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the groaning, grimy heart of medieval nightlife, the tavern. The moment you push open that creaking oak door, you're hit with the unmistakable funk of smoke, sweat, old ale, and something vaguely resembling boiled onion. The heat inside rolls out like a breath, thick with noise, laughter, shouting, off-key singing, and a blacksmith yelling for his change. The floor is sticky. You're pretty sure that wasn't mentioned in the fairy tale version. You tug your cloak tighter, scanning the chaos. A dog barks at your knee. Someone is already passed out in a corner, and a ceiling beam nearly knocks your hat off. Welcome to the Medieval Tavern. You're not ready. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you all are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge cautiously toward the bar, if you can call it that. It's a roughly planed plank of wood, darkened by age and ale, sagging under the weight of pottery jugs and empty trenchers. Behind it stands someone who might be a man or might be a tree stump come to life. Thick arms, a beard like a hay bale, and the eyes of someone who's seen a lot of very bad choices. This is the keeper of the ale, not a bartender, not really. Sometimes it's an alewife, especially in English towns where brewing was one of the few respected female trades. But tonight you get Grumblebeard, who grunts at you in Middle English and gestures toward a barrel. There are no menus, of course, no drinks list. You get ale. It might be thick, flat, and sour, or surprisingly smooth, depending on when the last batch was brewed and what they tossed in. Historians still argue whether ale in taverns was consistently safer than water, or if that's just something we like to believe. You hand over a coin that feels absurdly valuable, and in exchange you get a chipped mug that's still wet from the last user. Is that a bit of turnip floating in it? Probably. You take a cautious sip. It tastes like warm bread with a hint of radish? There's no time to judge. Someone jostles your elbow hard, laughing at a joke you didn't hear, and you're reminded taverns aren't places for solitude. They're buzzing social hubs, bursting at the seams with farmers, merchants, knights without horses, thieves without plans, and locals who haven't had a bath since last Michaelmas. A minstrel plucks at something that might be a lute or a tortured raccoon, singing a ballad about a maiden who turned into a goose, or maybe the goose turned into the maiden. It's hard to tell over the shouting. Taverns weren't just for drinking. They were the heart of the medieval social scene. They served as message boards, hiring centers, rumor mills, and sometimes even unofficial courts. In fact, one record from 14th century York describes a court session being interrupted by a barmaid chasing a pig through the alehouse. True story. And they were loud. Don't let those candle-lit, whispery scenes in movies fool you. Real taverns were rough, smoky, and full of overlapping noise. The walls are stained black from centuries of soot. A torch flickers near a painting of what might be St. George or might be a man punching a crocodile. You move deeper into the room, searching for a place to sit. There are benches here, long, uneven slabs of wood lined with rushes, bits of straw poking out, a chicken roosting in the corner like it owns the place. You dodge a spilled jug and narrowly avoid a brawl that seems to involve a sheep dispute. The tavern cat eyes you. It's missing one ear and has the unmistakable swagger of a creature that knows it outranks you. It hops onto the bench beside you, curls its tail around your leg, and promptly falls asleep, as if claiming you for the night. And even though it smells like 10 centuries of farts in here, there's something oddly comforting about the noise, the warmth, the chaotic closeness of it all. You're just one more weary traveler, wedged between a gossiping washerwoman and a knight arguing with his own boot. A man in a woolen cap tells you about the time he danced with the devil. Someone else swears he saw a fairy in the forest last Tuesday. You smile, or at least you try to, but you're also keeping one hand on your coin pouch, just in case. You've barely been here half an hour, and already you've learned a crucial truth of medieval tavern life. It's not about comfort, it's about connection. This is where people share news, seal deals, fall in love, start wars, and occasionally throw up in a bucket. And yes, you probably won't survive this, especially if you keep making eye contact with that guy who just burped in your direction and cracked his knuckles ominously. The floor squelches under your boots. Not creaks, not crunches, squelches. Like it's actively rejecting your presence. Something sticky tugs at your heel as you move toward a bench, and you make the grave mistake of looking down. The floor is a miserable mosaic of straw, spilled ale, animal droppings, and what you hope is mashed turnip. It's like medieval glue. One poorly aimed step and you're stuck forever beside a man who smells like boiled cabbage. This is not your world, and that becomes more obvious with every second. Because here's the thing, they have rules, not posted rules, not anything written down where a tourist could help themselves. No, these are the mysterious, grimy, unwritten social laws of the medieval tavern. Break one, and you might end up with your nose bleeding into your soup. Take, for instance, where you sit. You thought you could just plop down anywhere, didn't you? Rookie mistake? Turns out that bench is unofficially reserved for the local coopers, guys who make barrels and drink like they're trying to fill them again. You've just squeezed between two of them, both of whom turn slowly to look at you. One raises an eyebrow, the other adjusts his belt, which appears to have 3 knives and a string of dried eels hanging from it. You get up, fast. Smart choice. Historians still argue whether taverns had designated seating traditions or if people just aggressively claimed their favorite spot. But in truth, it likely varied town to town. What was common? The invisible social code. Know your place, don't look too smug, and never take someone else's mug, especially if their name's carved into the wood. Speaking of mugs, you're handed one by the server, who doesn't say a word, just stares at you long enough to make your scalp tingle. It's unclear whether you were supposed to pay yet, or tip. Do you even tip? You dig through your pouch and offer a coin. The server grunts, and the tension breaks. Maybe. Another rule, don't ask too many questions. That scholar-looking guy in the corner, he tried asking what gear it was. 4 people laughed, 1 person cried, the bartender threw an onion at him. So you learn fast. Act like you belong, even when your brain is screaming modern confusion. You eventually settle at a different table, carefully avoiding occupied seats and suspicious puddles. A man beside you is carving something into the tabletop with a dirty spoon. You're not sure if it's a message, a drawing, or just very aggressive doodling, but you nod politely. He nods back. You've made a friend, or at least not an enemy. That's a win. Another local elbows his companion and mutters something about your cloak. You catch the word foreign. Fantastic. Now you're that traveler, which is better than that thief, but still paints a target. Best stay quiet and drink slowly. Here's a fringe fitty tidbit. In some parts of medieval Europe, tavern-goers carried their own spoons and drinking vessels. That's right, BYOM, bring your own mug. Not because it was charming, but because communal ones were often not washed, like ever. The grime on the handle could be older than the current monarch. A man to your right gestures toward the bar and slurs something that might be cheers or chickens. Either way, he clinks his cup against yours and downs it in one go. Then he birches, the kind of birch that suggests spiritual trauma. You raise your mug half-heartedly and take another sip. Still warm, still suspiciously radish-like. The air in here is thick, not just with smoke, but with history. Actual living memory is floating in this tavern's beams. Over there's the chair where old Tom was caught kissing the miller's daughter. That stain on the wall? Someone's last stand after losing a game of bones. Even the door frame has notches. Counting what? No one knows. Maybe debts. Maybe wins. Maybe nights someone survived the stew. You look around and notice the symbols. Not just carvings from bored drinkers, but weird signs chalked near the fireplace or over the doorway. Apotrophic marks, they're called. Meant to ward off evil. Tavern folk were nothing if not superstitious. Devil at the door? Better have a protective doodle. Shadow crosses your pint? Someone whispers a prayer. Some places even had rules posted in rhyme. One 15th century tavern in France reportedly hung a plaque that read, "He who swears or draws his blade must pay for all the ale he made." Catchy, and also a gentle reminder that fights cost extra. Which brings you to the silent threat hanging in the air. Violence is always a possibility. A glance can escalate. A joke misheard might mean blood. And since the local sheriff is 3 meadows away, justice tends to happen right here, with fists, boots, or a swift push into the duck pond out back. You're learning, quickly. You avoid eye contact with the guy whose hairline meets his eyebrows. You keep your hands visible. You smile when smiled at, nod when nodded at, and mostly keep your mouth shut. Another rule, if you hear someone yell, "Hoy!" duck. It usually precedes a thrown object, and historically, taverns have seen everything from tankards to pickled eggs launched mid-argument. Despite the chaos, or maybe because of it, there's a strange rhythm here. People know how to be here. There's comfort in the noise, in the rituals, in the sticky familiarity of the floor. It's their place. You're just borrowing space. And for now, you're doing a decent job of not getting punched. You barely have time to take another cautious sip of ale before the energy in the room shifts. The front door creaks open again, this time with a gust of cold air and the unmistakable sound of sharp clogs on stone. Everyone glances over, some nod, a few mutter. The person who enters is large, loud, and carrying a sloshing jug under one arm and a worn cloth over the other. She doesn't so much walk as barrel into the room like she owns it, because she does. She's the alewife. If you were expecting the barkeep to be some rotund man with a twirly mustache, guess again. In many medieval towns, especially across England and parts of Germany, taverns were often run by women. Alewives brewed their own drink, managed their own money, and kept order with whatever blunt object was closest. This one looks like she prefers her ladle. She stomps past your bench, giving your cup a quick glance. She notes how much you've drunk and grunts, maybe approval, maybe a warning. Either way, your spine straightens. The room seems to hum around her. Someone moves out of her path. Someone else mutters a joke and immediately shuts up when she glares. Historians still debate whether alewives were seen as respected entrepreneurs or tolerated with suspicion, especially once brewing became more professionalized and male-dominated in later centuries. But tonight, she's unquestionably in charge. A few seconds later, a younger man, maybe her son or apprentice, or just some poor soul who owed her a favor, rushes out from behind the bar to follow orders barked in shorthand. "More mash! Less suit in the pot! Watch the goose!" You catch her eye. She stares at you with the focus of someone measuring flour by feel. Then she moves on, and you breathe again. She's not alone, though. In some taverns, especially in the city, a husband and wife team might manage the chaos together. Sometimes she ran the brewing while he handled the crowd, or vice versa. And in rare cases, the alewife was the brewer, accountant, muscle, and gossip broker all in one. The brewing process itself? Not exactly artisanal by modern standards. Picture cauldrons bubbling with grain mash, herbs, maybe a touch of nettle or sage, whatever was available. Hops were still making their way into European brewing by the late Middle Ages, so ale often tasted sweet, earthy, and maybe a bit funky. There's a reason you're not gulping it down. Now the alewife starts doing laps. She's not here for small talk, though you notice how she pauses to squeeze a shoulder or whisper into an ear. She's checking the temperature, the mood, the rhythm of the room. A good alewife feels the crowd, like a conductor sensing the tempo of a symphony where half the instruments are drunk and the triangle is on fire. There's a small chalkboard hanging by the bar with faint writing, maybe today's prices, or just reminders to feed the cat. One particularly fringe bit of history suggests some alewives used tasting sticks, wooden rods dipped into ale, pulled out and licked to check quality. If the foam stuck, the ale was likely good. If it slid off, back to the cauldron. Suddenly a commotion, two men yelling over something. One claims the other insulted his sister. The other claims the first man's sister asked to be insulted. The room stiffens. You glance at the alewife. She doesn't panic. She strides over, snatches the jug from one of their hands and smacks it down so hard on the table that it sloshes across their boots. She leans in and murmurs something you can't hear, but both men turn pale. One sits down. The other wipes his mouth and mumbles an apology to no one in particular. And just like that, the crisis is over. That's tavern management. No clipboard, no HR department, just a deep voice, a firm stare, and the looming threat of being banned, or worse, cut off from the ale. There's even a 14th century English poem, The Tuning of Eleanor Rumming, that portrays one such alewife in unflattering but weirdly reverent terms. The poem's gross, hilarious, and strangely informative. Historians still argue whether it's satire or an early form of Yelp review. But back to the moment, she's pouring a fresh round now, and the mugs clatter. One hits the table near you with a satisfying thunk. A bit spills on your sleeve. The smell is darker this time, stronger grain, maybe some crushed berries. You raise it and sip, still warm, still odd, but growing on you. A moment later, she's leaning on the bar again, watching the room like a general before a battle. The air smells thick with firewood and ale foam. A candle guttering in the far corner casts her long shadow on the back wall. No one misbehaves in that corner. She raises one eyebrow when a man tries to sneak out without paying. He freezes, turns back, drops a coin on the plank, and mutters something that might be "sorry" or "mercy." She doesn't even move, just nods once and turns back to pouring. That's power. You notice something carved on the underside of the bar as you pass. A crude little W inside a heart. Someone's way of honoring her or warning the next drinker. Hard to say. But it's clear whether she's here for business, tradition, survival, or all three, this tavern doesn't work without her. And honestly, neither do you. You raise your mug again and offer the smallest of nods in her direction. She doesn't smile, but her eyes glint.
You've survived the welcome, the rules, and the stare down from the alewife, but now the real test arrives. Your stomach rumbles, a gentle but undeniable medieval growl. and you realize you'll need to eat. You look around, trying not to draw attention to your newbie hesitation, and spot a few locals hunched over their bowls. Steam rises, someone slurps, a spoon clinks. It looks almost edible. You wander cautiously to the bar again, trying to signal that you're hungry without saying something foolish like, "What's on the menu?" Because, spoiler alert, there is no menu. There's just the stew. This is the tavern's food of the day, food of the week, food of eternity. It simmers in a blackened cauldron over a smoky fire, and no one knows exactly what's in it. There's a joke that's centuries old. What's in the stew? Yes. You're handed a wooden bowl. Inside, brownish goop, flecked with suspicious green things and at least one unpeeled root. A piece of something vaguely meat-like floats near the edge, and you eye up like it might blink. Then there's the bread, a wedge of dense, stale loaf that you could probably use as a weapon if dinner goes poorly. You take a tentative bite. It's warm, oddly comforting, and tastes like salt, pepper, cabbage, maybe lentils, or maybe gravel. You chew, slowly. It's edible. Kind of. Historians note that tavern food wasn't intended to be luxurious. It was fuel. Basic pottage made from leftover grains, scraps of meat, vegetables if available, and a generous helping of whatever didn't go bad yet. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some stew pots were never truly emptied. Called perpetual stew, they'd keep simmering day after day, sometimes for weeks. New ingredients were added on top of the old, flavors layered over time, bacteria hopefully boiled away. In some cases, the older the stew, the more hearty it was said to be. You're not sure whether to feel honored or endangered. The bread, for its part, is heavy, stale, and suspiciously hard at the corners. You try to dunk it. It resists like a rock, then suddenly absorbs all the stew in your bowl in one violent slurp. You've now created a doughy, spoon-resistant blob. Congratulations. Around you, the locals seem perfectly content. One man is licking his fingers. Another is using his knife to shave off a hunk of cheese that smells like wet wool. Someone else slaps a slice of dried fish onto their trencher, a flat slab of bread used as a plate. It soaks up juice, collects crumbs, and is sometimes eaten at the end, though just as often fed to dogs or beggars. You've definitely entered the eat what you're given phase of the evening. At another table, a couple is sharing a meat pie that looks genuinely promising. Golden crust, steam escaping in little puffs. You briefly wonder why you didn't get that. Then you remember, this is probably their pie, made at home, brought in for the evening, or bartered with the innkeeper for a free mug. Not all tavern food came from the tavern. Some places allowed outside meals, or even cooked on commission. Others had an in-house cook who may or may not have been sober. Still, you feel a flicker of envy. Or perhaps hallucination. Hard to tell. As you gnaw your bread brick, a man sits beside you and sets down what he proudly calls sausage. You glance. It's gray. It's leaking. And it's making a noise like it's still deciding if it wants to be eaten. You pretend not to notice. He tears into it with his teeth and lets out a contented sigh. Clearly, taste is subjective in this century. Drinks are easier. You've got your ale, still warm and sour. But there's also mead, a honey-based brew that offers sweetness, floral notes, and a slightly medicinal burn. You ask for some. It arrives in a clay mug that might have once been a flower pot. You sip. It tastes like someone melted a candle into cider. Still better than the stew. Some taverns served wine, particularly in southern regions or wealthier towns. But here, wine is rare, expensive, and often doctored with spices to cover up the sourness of age. If it's red, it probably came from someone's second cousin's vineyard. If it's white, it probably started life as vinegar. There's one last thing to mention about the food experience. You're not getting dessert. The concept of dessert, as we know it, doesn't really exist here. There might be dried fruit, or maybe a sticky little tart if someone had a good baking day. But for now, your only treat is a mildly suspicious fig someone left on the table. You pass. Then comes the sneeze. A man across the room lets one fly with alarming force. No one blesses him. Instead, they glance at him like he might have just cursed the stew. In medieval times, sneezes weren't taken lightly. Illness could spread fast, and some folks believed sneezing was a sign of possession. A few fingers make subtle gestures, wards perhaps. You quickly finish your bowl, pushing away the remnants of stew and your hopes. Your stomach is no longer rumbling, but it's now thinking. You pat it gently and hope it decides not to revolt. At least you didn't order the surprise pie. That poor guy at the back looks like he's trying to remember what joy feels like. So here you are, full enough, still alive, only moderately confused by what just entered your digestive system. The food may be questionable, the bread may be weapon grade, but somehow it all fits. This isn't just dinner. It's ritual, it's community. It's the one hot meal you'll get this week, and that counts for something. You raise your mug in solidarity with the man eating gray sausage.
You're adjusting to the tavern now. Your stomach's only lightly protesting. The warmth from the hearth is seeping into your cloak, and you've managed to claim a spot near the edge of the action without being challenged by anyone's elbows, knives, or livestock. But then a roar breaks out from the center table. Dice clatter across wood. Someone slaps the table so hard their mug tips over. There's laughter, groaning, and a cry of, "You cheatin' pig!" followed by a loud hiccup. Congratulations, you've wandered into the gambling pit. It's not a real pit, of course, just an informal clearing where a group of locals are clustered over a game of chance, eyes glittering, mouths already halfway to trouble. Dice games were the gambling pastime in medieval taverns, cheap, noisy, fast, and full of chaos. The most popular game? Hazard, which eventually evolved into modern craps. You'd throw 2 dice, call out a number, bet on outcomes, and argue passionately with anyone who questioned your luck. You inch closer, drawn by curiosity and perhaps mild boredom. A man with wild hair and no visible eyebrows is rolling the dice now. They bounce, clack, and land on snake eyes. Groans rise. He grins, scoops up the pot, mostly copper coins and, oddly, a chicken feather, and leans back like a king. The next player steps up, a monk. That's right, robes, tonsure, the whole deal. He gives a little nod to the group and casually pulls out a coin pouch that jingles suspiciously. Monks weren't always the picture of solemnity. Many were known to sneak out for a pint, a song, and the occasional reckless roll of dice. Some religious orders were stricter than others, of course, and historians still argue whether these were isolated incidents or part of a broader monks behaving badly trend. But this guy, he's clearly a regular. He rolls. A perfect 12. Cheers erupt. Suspicious? Maybe, especially since his dice seem a little too perfect. One man squints, rubs the die between his fingers, then sniffs it. Why? No one knows, but everyone suddenly leans in closer. One fringe rumor from the 13th century claimed that certain dice were weighted using wax or lead inserts, early cheating tech that would make even Vegas proud. This monk might just be hiding a pair of loaded bones in his sleeves, or maybe he's just blessed. You're invited to play. The man beside you elbows your ribs and nods toward the dice. He says, "Fresh meat," with a grin full of missing teeth. You hesitate. You've got a few coins left, and losing them to a monk in a gambling ring feels oddly poetic. You nod, carefully. You toss a coin into the pile and roll. It's a 7. Safe. Middle of the road. The monk grins at you, maybe impressed, maybe planning your financial ruin. As the game continues, other types of wagers fly around. Someone bets that the goose in the corner will bite the next person who walks by. It does. Screams follow. Another man bets 2 onions that he can sing the entire ballad of Sir Watkin's Pants backwards. He gets to pants and passes out.
Gambling in medieval taverns wasn't just dice. People bet on anything: chess matches, rooster fights, foot races, even who could chug ale the fastest without dying. Wagers weren't always money. Common items included chickens, eggs, firewood, a chunk of cheese, or even labor. Yes, you could literally gamble away a day's work. One man at the far end of the table just lost a goat. You're not sure if the goat knows it's been lost yet, but it's definitely still inside, chewing on the rushes. There are shouts of joy, accusations of cheating, and the occasional threat of violence, but so far, nothing serious. The alewife is watching. Her ladle is very close at hand. That's probably why this hasn't turned into a brawl yet. You start to notice something else. The cheating isn't always hidden. Sometimes it's practically a performance. Sleight of hand, flashy rolls, dramatic storytelling. Players are more like actors in a tavern play, all fully aware of the game behind the game. The monk catches your eye and winks as he pockets another coin. It's possible, just possible, that the real game isn't the dice. The real game is the drama. And here's a fun, weird bit of history. Some towns actually hired tavern watchers, essentially bouncers and tattlers, who would report illegal gambling to the local bailiff. Of course, this usually just meant paying them off with a pint or two and everything went back to normal. It was the 14th century equivalent of clearing your browser history. Back at the table, the energy is escalating. The bets are getting bigger. Someone's put their boots on the line. Another man has bet his week's pay and looks like he knows he's made a mistake. You're about to make your polite exit when the monk turns to you. "Double or nothing," he says, offering those glittering dice. You think about it, about the sticky floor, the stew-shaped regret in your belly, and the few coins left in your pouch. Then you smile, shake your head, and say, "Pass." A cheer erupts behind you as another player rolls a perfect pair of sixes. The monk shrugs, as if to say, "Suit yourself," and turns back to the game. You step away, a little poorer, a little wiser, and definitely more entertained. As you move back to your bench, the shouting fades into the background, the clatter of dice mixing with laughter and curses. You sit, exhale, and sip the last of your mead. You're still in one piece. You duck beneath a low beam as you pass into the tavern's side room, where the local minstrel has just begun to tune his lute with an audible twang. In the flickering candlelight, you can't help but notice he's not alone. 3 dancers are limbering up in the corner, one adjusting her bells, another fluffing her unruly curls. The room smells of feet, wax, and something spicy, possibly mulled wine, possibly something that once was a turnip. You find yourself a spot near the wall, careful not to trip over a stray dog curled under a bench. Then it begins. Music in medieval taverns isn't background noise, it's the event. The lute player starts with a slow, lilting melody, fingers plucking the strings with such finesse that you start to question if he actually knows what he's doing or is just very confident. But when the dancers rise, twirling into the room, their bells jingling, it's clear this is rehearsed, at least loosely. One dancer, the leader perhaps, casts a wink at a portly merchant who nearly drops his meat pie in flustered awe. Your eyes are drawn to the instruments, lutes, flutes, even a rebec, a strange stringed thing that sounds like a violin met a weasel. And oh, the drums, hand-beaten with an intensity that makes you wonder if someone's exorcising a demon. These performances often double as a tavern's marketing strategy. More music, more feet through the door, more mugs emptied. It's economics, just with more jigging. Now, you may expect noble ballads and haunting madrigals, but the tunes here are bawdy, quick-paced and packed with cheeky lyrics. One song is about a cheating blacksmith, another about a pig that learned to dance. You're halfway through a verse about a knight who wet himself in battle when you realize everyone is singing along, loudly, off-key. Minstrels are not just entertainment, they're news-bearers too. Between songs, they slip in verses about faraway battles, court scandals, and the price of grain. Historians still argue whether traveling musicians were reliable news sources or just medieval gossip bloggers with better rhymes. Either way, when the minstrel sings of a fiery comet seen over London, you hear a gasp from the far table and someone muttering about end times. A few locals toss coins, not many because coins are precious, but enough to keep the troupe smiling. Others pay in turnips, or stale bread, or a gulp of ale. Payment is flexible when the only currency that truly matters is attention. You even catch one dancer accepting a shiny button with surprising grace. You don't dare ask if that's standard. Suddenly, a hush falls. The minstrel switches from body tunes to something slower, melancholic even. It's a ballad of unrequited love between a stable boy and a noblewoman. You feel the tension shift. A few women stop gossiping to hum along. A burly man wipes something from his eye and then loudly denies it. The room, despite its grime and clatter, feels momentarily sacred. This is the magic of medieval tavern entertainment. It's not polished or choreographed. It's raw, real, sometimes ridiculous, but always communal. You laugh, cry, clap, and groan, not just at the performers, but with everyone else. It's bonding through shared absurdity. The dancers bow with a flourish, one nearly tripping over a drunken rooster. Yes, there's a rooster. And the minstrel blows a kiss toward the hearth before packing up his battered lute. You think the show is over, but oh no, now it's your turn. A man with a tankard and very few teeth calls out asking if you know a tune. Others begin to chant, "Sing, sing, sing," and before you can escape, someone hands you a wooden spoon and shoves a pot at your chest. You're now the percussion section. Now let's be clear, your rhythm is awful, but no one cares. You bang and rattle and yell nonsense into the room while the crowd cheers like you're some long-lost bard of yore. Someone throws a piece of bread. You eat it. You're one of them now. This is medieval open mic night, and there are no bad acts, just louder ones. And here's a quirky twist. Sometimes these performances are coded. Songs might carry secret messages, especially if there's political unrest. A line about a broken crown might mean more than a bad dental visit. Local lords usually don't attend taverns, but their spies might. Still, most tunes are harmless enough, especially if the ale's been flowing. By the end of the evening, the music blends into the background once more, woven into the wooden beams and sticky floorboards. The performers disappear into the crowd or head back to their own ale-soaked corners. You feel strangely uplifted. Despite the smoke, the noise, the questionable smell, you've just experienced a rare kind of communal storytelling, the likes of which modern karaoke nights can only dream of. You barely have time to adjust your eyes to the dim candlelight when it begins, the strange choreography of medieval flirtation and fury. Across the room, a burly man with 2 missing teeth and 3 tankards of ale slams his mug on the table and begins serenading the barmaid with a slurred ballad. She rolls her eyes, tosses her apron, and saunters away.
but not before shooting a deadly glare in your direction. That's right, you accidentally made eye contact. Apparently, in this place and time, even a glance can be misread as a challenge or a proposition. The drunk admirer now turns his gaze on you, squints, and frowns. You can practically see the thought process brewing behind his foggy eyes. Did this stranger just steal my woman? The room stills for a brief second. Then his fist slams the table again, this time with conviction. Before you can clarify that you were just trying to find the latrine, he's on his feet, wobbling toward you with the balance of a newborn goat. His friend, who seems to have two functional eyes but only one working ear, stands beside him for support, or perhaps as an additional threat. You try to defuse the situation. Maybe it's the way you raise your hands that looks too knightly, or maybe your foreign shoes scream outsider. Either way, he throws a punch and misses entirely. He topples over onto a sleeping dog. The dog yelps. Someone else yells, "Fight!" And suddenly the tavern turns into a medieval cage match. Chairs are tossed. Ale spills. A lute gets tragically broken over someone's back. One man pulls out a wooden spoon like it's a dagger. Meanwhile, a little old woman stands in the corner, laughing maniacally as she removes her false teeth and waves them like a battle flag. That's probably your signal to duck. You crouch under the table as tankards crash above you, noticing a second pair of boots already hiding there. A boy, maybe 14, maybe 40, you can't tell with the poor nutrition, nods at you solemnly and hands you a half-eaten meat pie. "He's smart," he whispers. "You never fight unless someone calls you a Norman." Eventually, the barmaid returns, wielding a broom like a halberd, and restores order with a few strategic whacks. Your would-be attacker is now unconscious on the floor, cradled by the judgmental pig. Someone picks up the old woman's teeth and hands them to her like a sacred relic. You slowly emerge from beneath the table, brush off some old cabbage, and check for bruises. Somehow, you're fine. Somehow, you're still standing. And somehow, someone across the tavern just winked at you.
You don't realize how long you've been sitting there in the heat and swirl of the tavern until a cool draft brushes your neck. Someone's just opened the main door. Heads turn. A short, broad-shouldered man steps in, pulling his hood down to reveal a face weathered by wind and road. His cloak is splattered with dust, his boots caked with dried mud. The room goes quiet for half a heartbeat. Then, in a loud voice, rough with travel, he calls, "Ale," and "meat if it's not too gray." A few men greet him with raised mugs. The stranger nods, but chooses a bench in the corner, far from the fire, near the shadows. You can't help watching him. His hand never strays far from the hilt of his dagger. His eyes, though tired, scan the room sharply. He's no ordinary traveler. Maybe a bounty hunter. Maybe worse. You realize how fragile the peace here is. The joviality is thick, but so is the tension beneath it, like wine layered over sharp vinegar. These people all know something you don't. Old grudges, debts, love affairs, vendettas, they're all lurking in this room, hidden just under the laughter and lute songs. A fresh plate of pork is set before you. You realize you're starving again. Eating with one hand, you sip your second mug of ale. This one is stronger, more bitter. Your lips tingle. Behind you, the bard has shifted into a mournful ballad about a knight who rode to war and never came home. A young woman near the fire blinks fast, looking away. Maybe she had someone who didn't come back either. Your thoughts are interrupted by the innkeeper's wife, who suddenly appears at your elbow. "Coin," she says, holding out a hand. "You've had 2 mugs, a plate, and bread. 2 pennies. Or 1 if you wash the dishes." You fumble for your pouch, trying to seem casual, but you're painfully aware of how few coins remain. The glint of silver is gone, only a few battered pennies and a half-button of copper you meant to trade. You hand her 1 penny. "Dishes," you say. She gives you a half-smile. Was that pity or amusement? And points you toward the back. The kitchen is less a room than a dark lean-to behind the tavern, open to the sky in one corner. Rain must pour in when the weather turns. A large wooden basin, half full of lukewarm gray water, awaits you. You plunge your hands in, greasy, cold, and murky. A thin lad, no older than 12, scrubs beside you. "New here?" he asks. His hands move fast, practiced. He doesn't meet your eyes. "Don't let him cheat you. The meat's 3 days old, always is on Thursday." You thank him. He shrugs. From this side of the building you can hear things the main room drowns out. The mutter of negotiations in the alley, the rhythmic thud of the blacksmith across the street, and above all, the creak and groan of old timbers as the tavern leans with every gust of wind. You return inside smelling like lard and onions, but feel strangely part of something now. A few patrons nod as you pass, as if earning your meal earns you their respect. You find yourself drifting back toward the hearth, the warmest spot in the room. The bard has finished his sad song and begun tuning again, perhaps something faster next. 2 men argue half-heartedly over dice. One of them waves you over. "Care for a throw?" he asks, grinning with yellowed teeth. You hesitate, but sit. The dice are carved bone, heavy in your hand. You roll, snake eyes. The table erupts in groans and laughter. The night rolls forward. Stories grow louder, voices bolder. A woman dances with reckless joy. A man sings terribly off-key. Someone slaps the table so hard the mugs bounce. You laugh, for real this time. Not because something's funny, but because you feel full, warm, human, part of the tapestry of the night. And then, just as you start thinking you might stay here longer than planned, a cloaked figure emerges from the stairwell. He moves differently, silent, focused. He walks past you without a glance and hands a folded parchment to the innkeeper. The room hushes again. You can feel it shift, the undercurrent. Whatever this message contains, it's not good. The innkeeper opens it. His eyes widen. He folds it again with trembling fingers and nods at the messenger, who vanishes as quietly as he came. The bard stops playing. Everyone knows something's about to change. You swallow hard. Something tells you you won't be sleeping peacefully tonight. The silence after the messenger leaves is unnatural. It spreads like smoke, clinging to the beams, thickening the air. The bard sets down his lute. The dice players stop mid-throw. Even the drunk in the corner blinks, as if sobered. The innkeeper says nothing at first. He simply tucks the parchment into the folds of his apron and gives a single nod to his wife. She vanishes through a side door. A moment later, the shutters are drawn closed, one by one, sealing off the tavern from the world outside. You glance around, trying to read faces. There's a flicker of alarm in the blacksmith's eyes. The 2 dice players exchange whispers. The cloaked traveler in the corner, the one who seemed to watch everything, he's suddenly not watching. He's standing, hand on his blade. You feel the shift. The tavern, once a nest of laughter and story, has turned into something else entirely. A fortress, a secret, and you're inside it.
You lean toward the hearth, drawing the warmth into your chest as if it might shield you. The flames dance, uncaring, ignorant of whatever news just turned this night on its head. The innkeeper finally speaks. The Duke's men will ride through at dawn. Not a patrol, a levy. They're taking names, collecting swords, and sons. Gasps erupt. A woman clutches her apron. One man throws his mug to the floor, the crash loud enough to wake the ghosts. Even the drunk flinches. The traveler in the corner murmurs something you don't catch. The innkeeper replies, "Aye." It started. You don't need to ask what. There's been talk of war for weeks, between lords, between brothers, between the crown and the wild north. But it was always talk, distant, political, until now. Now the war has feet, horses, steel, and it's riding straight toward this village. Your mind races. You are not a soldier. You're barely more than a wanderer with empty pockets and scraped palms. If they conscript the able-bodied, do you count? Would you fight for a duke you've never met? The boy from the kitchen slips in beside you. "They'll take me," he whispers. "I'm nearly 13. That's old enough, isn't it?" You want to say no. You want to lie. But his eyes tell you he already knows the answer. "Hide," you murmur. "Cellar, somewhere dark." He nods and vanishes, like smoke between tables. The innkeeper lifts his voice now. "Those who wish to stay the night, stay. Those who wish to run, run fast. By first light the roads will be watched." A scramble begins. Some men rise at once, grabbing cloaks and satchels. Others remain frozen, torn between family and fear. One woman sinks to her knees. You sit still, not because you're brave, but because you don't know where you'd go. The tavern, with all its clamor and spills and smoke, felt like the first place in weeks you belonged. Now it feels like a trap. The cloaked traveler crosses to your table. He moves like someone born for this world of shadows and blades. He stops beside you, eyes scanning your face. You've got decent eyes, not soft like the rest. You blink. "Excuse me?" You'll need to choose. Stand with the fools who will wait and pray, or move before the storm hits. Either way, drink your last cup like it matters. And then he's gone. Out the back door. Gone into the night. You stare at the last of your ale. It sloshes gently, golden brown, catching firelight like it's liquid sunlight. You down it. The taste is bitter, but it fills you with resolve. You stand, your bench scraping loudly against the floorboards. Heads turn. You speak only one word. "Cellar." The innkeeper nods. No more needs to be said. The next moments are a blur. His wife lifting a trapdoor beneath a rug, the stale rush of damp air, the creak of old wood. One by one, a few of you descend, those with something to protect, those with nowhere else to run. You're last down. The trapdoor closes above you. Darkness wraps around you like an old cloak. You hear breath, feel motion, smell earth and mildew. Then a candle flares, and the stories begin again. Quieter, darker. Tales of raids, of rebellion, of kings who took too much. You lean back against a barrel and listen. The tavern above may never be the same, but for now, deep in the belly of the old building, among strangers and flickering light, you're still part of the story. And dawn hasn't come yet.
The cellar air presses in around you, damp, earthy, close. You sit on a barrel that creaks beneath your weight, the scent of pickled cabbage and old apples curling up into your nose. The single candle flickers against stone walls, shadows jumping like phantoms. No one speaks at first, but silence, like wine, ferments over time. Finally, a young man with patched sleeves and a stubbled jaw breaks it. "Was the last levy like this?" he asks into the dark. "Back when the Baron tried to break away?" A woman near the candle answers, her voice low. "Worse. They took the animals, too. Food stores. Anything that wasn't nailed down. Called it a temporary requisition. Still haven't gotten my ox back." Someone chuckles bitterly. Another mutters, "Least you had an ox." You glance around. There are maybe 8 of you down here. Some you remember from the tavern floor, the dice player, the baker's daughter with the fire-red scarf, and the silent boy who helped you wash dishes, and a few others who must have slipped in when the shutters closed. The innkeeper's wife, still above, had handed down 2 more candles and a jug of weak wine before shutting the trapdoor again. She didn't say if she'd be back, but she left it open just enough for air, just enough for hope. The fire-red scarf girl begins humming. It's barely a tune, just a winding thread of sound to keep the silence from returning. Her eyes are closed, but her fingers pluck at an invisible harp. Maybe she was a musician once, or maybe she just wants to feel like one now, when the world is shrinking into cellars and whispers. You shift. You feel the weight of the candlelight on your skin, like warmth in a world that's grown suddenly cold. And then the baker's daughter speaks. "They'll ride in by sunrise," she says. "That's how it was before. You'll hear the hooves long before you see them. Don't open the trapdoor until the sound is gone, not even a crack." Someone swallows loudly. Another voice, a deep, weary one, adds, "They knock first, pretend they're just checking. But if you answer, they come in numbers." This isn't a tavern anymore. It's a bunker. The dice player, sitting on a crate with his elbows on his knees, offers you a flask. "Stronger than the swill upstairs," he says. You nod your thanks. Take a cautious sip. It burns, but it also steadies. He raises his voice, a half-drunken grin twitching at his face. "A toast! To the gods of luck! May they be blind, deaf, and too drunk to notice us tonight." A few murmured "ayes," a half-hearted clink of flask to cup. Outside, above, you hear a gust of wind whistle past the shuttered windows, then silence again. Except not quite. There's a sound, far off, faint, a metallic ring. A hoof. Everyone tenses. The red scarf girl's humming dies mid-note. The candlelight seems to shrink, or maybe it's just your breath catching. You press your ear to the stone wall. Nothing. Then, another hoofbeat. Closer. More. A creak above. Leather reins. A man's barked order. They're here. You're in the cellar of a building that suddenly feels as fragile as parchment. Your heartbeat echoes in your ears. You feel the tension of 8 different fears pressed into one space. You feel the trapped door above you like a lid. A knock. Just once. You count in your head. 1, 2, 3. Another knock. Harder. Then a voice. "Tavern keeper, open for inspection." No one moves. Another voice, deeper. "He knows better. They've all been warned." Boots on wooden planks,
They're walking across the tavern floor now, every step like a hammer against your spine. Something crashes. Maybe they've overturned a bench. You grit your teeth. Suddenly scraping. The trap door shifts. Your breath catches. The baker's daughter lunges, silently holding it down with her whole body. Someone else joins her. The trap door stills. Above, voices rise. If you're hiding folk, if there's a single man of age not accounted for... A pause. Then the unmistakable sound of mugs being shattered, a table overturned, the creak of beams. You think of the bar, the place that had felt like home for one sweet hour. You wonder if it will still stand tomorrow. Minutes pass. Hoofbeats again. This time, fading. No one dares speak. The candle gutters, then dies. Darkness swallows the cellar. And still you wait, because dawn has not come yet, and the world above has changed. You don't know how long you've sat there in the dark. Time folds in on itself when there's no sun, no bell tower, no crack of light to mark the hours. Just breath and the occasional shift of someone's limbs against stone. Every sound above feels louder now. The groan of wind against timber, a cartwheel rattling down the road, a rooster's confused crow, early or late, you can't tell. No one speaks until the trap door creaks again, slowly, cautiously. A sliver of light spills in, pale gold, not candlelight, dawn. The innkeeper's wife peers in. Her face looks drawn, older somehow, like she's lived through a season in a single night. Her voice is rough. They've gone, for now. A few people exhale sharply. One man starts to rise but wobbles on unsteady legs. You climb up into the main room, blinking at the dim daylight seeping through the unshuttered windows. The tavern is wrecked. Tables overturned, stools broken, splinters scattered across the floor. Ashes are smeared across the hearthstone like someone stomped out the fire with rage. The air smells of stale beer and fear. The innkeeper himself is by the bar, nursing a cut above his brow. A shallow bowl of water sits in front of him, pinked with blood. He looks up, expression blank. Didn't find the cellar. Didn't look too hard. They weren't here to take all, just to show we're watched. You help right one of the benches. The wood groans beneath your hands, familiar and strange. The place that gave you a story is still here, but it feels like a story you're no longer inside. The red scarf girl is at the window, lifting the shutter slowly. Outside, the village looks unchanged. Chickens pack at dirt. A man hauls water from a well. Smoke curls from a chimney. But it's not the same. You realize the peace of this place is an illusion. It's a fragile crust over something deeper, older, survival. You sit near the hearth again. There's no fire now, only a faint warmth in the stones. The bard is there too, clutching his battered lute, the strings half snapped. His fingers trace them absently, like a priest fingering broken prayer beads. He looks up at you. There's a song in this night. You nod. But who'll want to hear it? His eyes glint. Someone will. People always want to know how others survived. He begins to strum, quietly, slowly. Not a melody. Not yet. Just feeling his way back into the music, into courage, into breath. The baker's daughter appears with bread, hard and rough but warm from somewhere. She tears it into pieces and hands them out wordlessly. You take yours and eat. Chew. Swallow. It's dry. It's real. The others begin to drift out of the tavern. The boy from the kitchen disappears through the back. The dice player slaps your shoulder once in passing and murmurs, "Still breathing. That's the game." When it's quiet again, just you, the bard, the innkeeper, and the breadcrumbs, you finally rise. "Where will you go?" the innkeeper asks, voice flat. You hesitate. The truth is, you don't know. You had no destination when you arrived, no name that would protect you, no kin waiting at the edge of town. But something's changed in you. You faced the edge of a blade in the dark and didn't crumble. You say, "I'll walk." To where? Where the road lets me. He nods once, as if that's all anyone can really do. You gather what little you have, a satchel, your cloak, a crust of bread wrapped in cloth. The innkeeper hands you a flask. Water, with a little bite. You smile. Thank you. You step outside into the thin morning sun. The village feels dazed. People move slowly, checking doors, speaking in hushed voices. A few glances your way, but no one stops you. The road curves just beyond the well. Trees line the path, still dark with dew. Birds call from branches. Life persists. You glance back once. The tavern stands crooked as ever, proud in its wear. Scarred, but unbroken. You take a step forward. Then another. You don't know what lies ahead. More war, more cold nights, maybe a town that hasn't yet heard hoofbeats in the dark. But something's changed in you. You faced the edge of a blade in the dark and didn't crumble. The Song of Fear. The silence of courage. The warmth of fire, even in a world that tried to steal it.
The road greets you like an old, silent friend. No questions, no explanations, just dirt, dew, and distance. Your boots crunch on loose gravel as you walk, each step pulling you away from the tavern's warmth and toward whatever lies ahead. You pass hedges choked with bramble, fields where scarecrows lean like tired soldiers, and fences mended more with hope than skill. The air is sharper now, filled with the scent of turned soil and far-off smoke. Somewhere a raven caws once, harsh and final, as if announcing that the world has changed. By midday, you reach the edge of a village. Not yours, not yet. It's quieter than expected. A single cart moves down the main lane. Two boys kick a stuffed ball between them, but their eyes flit toward you as you approach. Suspicion? Curiosity? Both. You nod politely.
they don't return it. The baker's stall here is shuttered. The smithy's fire has burned low. Something heavy hangs over the place. Perhaps word of the Duke's riders reached here too. Or perhaps the weight of fear is simply a new season everyone is learning to wear. A young woman watches you from a doorway. Her sleeves are rolled to the elbow, arms dusted with flour. Her hands freeze mid-kneed as she studies you. Travelers bring stories and trouble. You move on, past a moss-covered well and a weathered chapel. No bells ring out, no priests in sight. You come upon a small gathering of people near the green. They stand in a circle, heads bowed. In the center lies a cart, its wheels broken. Covered in a linen shroud is what you can only assume is a body. You don't stare, but the quiet lingers in your chest. After a while, you reach a tree that grows at the fork of the road. Tall, gnarled, older than any building. There are signs nailed into its bark, names of villages, directions carved by hands long since buried. One arm of the road leads west toward the mountains. The other curves down toward the marshes and the sea. You rest under the tree's shadow, the sun filtered through its boughs, light splintered into gold-green shards. You eat the rest of the bread the baker's daughter gave you and sip from the flask. The bite in the water has faded. Now it tastes only of tin and time. You think of the others back in the tavern. Did the bard stay? Did he write the song? Did the boy find a place to hide when they return? Did the innkeeper's wife weep when the riders left? You wonder if you'll ever pass by that crooked tavern again, see it rebuilt, filled with laughter and dice and songs again, or if, by the time you return, it'll be nothing but ash. A gust of wind picks up, brushing dust across your boots. It feels like a whisper urging you on. You choose the left road, the one toward the sea. You follow it as it narrows, as hedgerows rise on either side, hemming you in like a story still unfolding. The sun dips lower behind you, casting long shadows. By evening, the road becomes a path, and the path a trail. You find shelter in an old ruin, stone walls open to the sky, moss growing in the cracks. There's no fire, but the stones still hold the day's heat. You curl beneath your cloak, using your satchel as a pillow, and watch the stars slowly blink awake. You remember the bard's words. People want to know how others survived. You whisper softly to yourself, recounting the past 2 days, how you arrived at the tavern with nothing but a coin and a question, how you shared bread in a cellar, how you listened to hooves overhead while holding your breath like it was glass. You survived. Tomorrow might be worse, or it might be a new beginning. Dawn is slower here. There are no roosters, no distant bells, no rising bustle of a village. Just birdsong, soft and tentative, like nature is unsure if it's safe to speak again. You open your eyes to gray sky and cold stone. Your back aches from the uneven ruin floor. Your breath fogs in the morning air, but you're alive, and no hoofbeats chased your dreams. You rise, brush off the moss, and step out from the ruin,
The path ahead is narrow and choked with weeds, the forest now pressing close on both sides. Your boots find their rhythm again. The flask is nearly empty, the bread long gone. Your stomach protests, but your mind walks ahead of your body, already scouting the day. You pass a stretch of burnt-out ground. Ash smudges the soil like bruises. A few blackened beams lie fallen, what once may have been a cottage or outpost. You don't stop. You don't need to. You know what fire leaves behind and what it takes with it. By midday, the trees thin. The air smells different now. Salt, rot, marsh. The road lowers. Patches of wet soil and reeds suck at your steps. You spot gulls overhead. The sea isn't far. You come to a riverside hamlet, barely more than a few cottages and a crooked wooden pier. Boats bob on the brown water, most patched and weathered. A fishmonger in a leather apron slaps gutted eels onto a stone slab, ignoring the blood that pools at his feet. Children chase each other barefoot through puddles, and no one looks at you like you don't belong. That's how you know. Travelers are common here. This is a place between places. You find an old woman selling dried apples from a handcart. You give her your last copper button, and she hands you 3 pieces wrapped in coarse cloth. She eyes your boots and says, "If you're heading for the ferry, it's been delayed." You blink. "Ferry?" She nods toward the end of the pier. There, a flat-bottomed boat bobs in place, lashed with ropes. A man in a broad hat and missing teeth lounges nearby, carving runes into a plank. "Storm up north," she adds. "They say bandits took the river crossing. Everything's bottlenecked." You chew your dried apple and consider your options. There's a faded map posted near the ferry office, if it can be called that. Just a leaning post with some rotting parchment tacked on. But you study it. Across the river lies a larger town, Guildmere. Merchants, shipwrights, maybe even a magistrate. The kind of place where names carry weight and fortunes shift in a single dice roll. But the ferry's stuck. You walk to the edge of the dock. The river below flows sluggish and brown, thick with reeds and old branches. Not the kind of water you swim across, and certainly not if you want to keep what little you own. You glance around. Near the edge of the pier, a girl about your age sits cross-legged mending a net. Her fingers move fast, looping twine like she was born to it. She glances up once, sees you watching, and calls out, "You want to get across?" You nod. She jerks her head toward a skiff tied nearby. "If you've got arms strong enough to row, I'll guide you through the current. The ferry won't run till morning." You hesitate. You're not a sailor, but the sun is already slanting westward, and staying here means spending another night under open sky. You nod again. She smiles slightly, then stands, wipes her hands on her trousers, and jumps into the skiff with the grace of someone who's done it 1,000 times. She says, "Name's Ellen. You?" You hesitate. For a long moment you consider offering your real name, but something holds you back. You say, "Call me Ash." It's not quite a lie. It's what you feel like lately. Something burned, but not gone. She accepts it without question. "Ash, then. Let's row." The oars are heavy, but the rhythm comes. The current pushes, resists. Ellen steers with quiet commands. Left a bit, now harder. The water laps at the boat's sides, and for a moment you think of the tavern's old mugs, how they clink together in warmth. That feels like another life. Halfway across,
She speaks again. You running from something? You don't answer right away. You focus on the oars, on your arms, on the horizon behind her. No, you say eventually, but I'm not running toward anything either. She nods. Sometimes that's safer. As you near the far bank, Guildmere's buildings rise up like teeth, gray, sharp-edged, hungry for stories and coin alike. The skiff bumps gently against the dock. You hand her the cloth that once held your apple slices. She raises a brow. For your kindness, you say. She smiles and pockets it. And then you step onto new land. The river behind you. The city ahead. Your story still unwritten.
Guildmere smells of salt, smoke, and secrets. The buildings rise like a city built by stone and stubbornness. Narrow alleys, leaning balconies, windows shuttered not to block light but to keep out eyes. You walk past fishmongers calling prices no one seems to pay, street boys with clever hands, and cloaked women muttering over baskets of herbs. The road underfoot turns from gravel to uneven cobblestone. Your boots scuff across wet moss and horse droppings. A dog barks from behind a slated gate. Someone shouts in a dialect you don't know. You step aside just in time to avoid a barrow of cabbages pushed by a boy who doesn't look old enough to walk alone. This city breathes differently than the village or the tavern. Faster. Hungrier. You walk with your hand near your coin pouch, what little remains. A copper shard, a button, and a smooth river stone that you never meant to keep but haven't thrown away. Maybe for luck. A sign catches your eye. A crooked board with faded gold lettering. The Hushed Harp. Another tavern. You hesitate. Inside you hear no music, just low murmurs, the scrape of cutlery, and the occasional barked laugh. The windows are streaked with grime. The door groans on its hinges. You enter. And the world slows again. The light here is dim, filtered through a heavy canvas instead of glass. The walls are lined with tapestries, most faded, one slashed, and a few likely stolen. A harp does hang over the hearth, broken, one string still attached. The rest dangle like a throat half cut. A few heads turn as you step in. A woman with rings on every finger. A man whose nose has clearly been broken more than once. A child with eyes too old for his frame. You approach the bar. The barkeep is wide-shouldered and missing an eye. He watches you with the other. "Room?" he asks, before you can speak. You nod. "How much?" "2 silvers. You show him your pouch. He grunts. "Then it's the floor or the stables. Or you can earn it." You glance back. No one's looking anymore. The tavern has returned to its rhythm. How? He slides a small pouch across the counter. "Take this to the tanner. Back alley past the dye vats. Don't open it, don't speak of it. Do it fast, and I'll give you stew and a corner near the fire." You hesitate only for a second, then take the pouch. It's heavier than it looks. The contents shift with a wet slosh. Not coin, not grain. You leave the tavern quickly. Outside, the city is colder. You follow his directions, down a path past the butchers, past a lane where 3 men are dicing on a barrel, past the vats where dye boils in every color imaginable, staining the air with vinegar and steam. The back alley is narrow. A door waits, half buried in ivy. You knock once. It opens without a word. A hand appears. You place the pouch in it. The door shuts. No words. You walk back fast, heart pounding harder than you like. But the barkeep only nods when you return, slides a bowl of something warm your way, points to the hearth. Floor's yours till dawn. You sit, eat slowly. The stew is thick, salty, filled with unidentifiable bits. But it's warm, and it fills your chest like safety. Someone begins humming in the corner. Not a bard, just a woman brushing out her hair, singing to herself like no one else exists. You lie down against the wall, the floor beneath you rough and dusty. A stray cat curls beside your side, drawn by warmth or pity. You close your eyes. You dream of hooves on the tavern floor again. Only this time, you open the trapdoor yourself, and you climb out, holding a sword.
As the embers in the hearth burn low, and the deep chill of the outside night pushes through the cracks in the old wooden walls, you realize how grateful you are for this place. Not just the food or drink, but the closeness, the stories, the strange sense of safety born from chaos. You've made acquaintances that might become allies, and enemies that might someday become friends. In this world, relationships are fluid, forged in the iron crucible of survival and mutual need. The bard winds down his melody with a lilting minor refrain. A final chord lingers in the smoky air. The crowd applauds with claps, cheers, the clink of mugs. He bows graciously and begins packing away his loot. From across the room, he flashes you a look, not of recognition necessarily, but understanding, like two souls that have briefly crossed paths in a storm. By now, the fire's glow flickers faintly in the eyes of the remaining patrons. The innkeeper nods to his wife and begins closing shop. A few last customers shuffle out, cloaks pulled tight, voices low. You're among the last to remain, stretching out the final warmth of the evening before retreating to the freezing dark above. You trudge slowly up the narrow wooden stairs to the upper floor. They creak with every step, betraying your presence to anyone still awake. The corridor is narrow, the ceiling low. You pass other chamber doors, some ajar, revealing candlelight, others closed tight with snores or whispers within. You reach your own small room at the end. Inside, it's barely more than a cot and a chamber pot. No fireplace, only the thick wool blanket folded at the foot of the bed. You set your things down carefully. Your coin pouch beneath your pillow, dagger within arm's reach. You know better than to leave anything to chance, not in a world where desperation sleeps just one thin door away. You sit for a moment on the edge of the bed, still hearing the echo of laughter from below, the ghost of the bard's melody, the smell of wood smoke clinging to your clothes. You let out a breath, a long one. Your boots feel impossibly heavy. You pull them off with effort, then the rest of your layers, one by one, until you're under the coarse but warm blanket. The straw-stuffed mattress pokes you in the ribs. The wind howls faintly outside, rattling the shutters. Somewhere down the hallway, a baby cries and is quickly hushed. Someone coughs, a long racking sound that reminds you how easily death passes from one mouth to another in these parts. But none of that matters now. You're safe enough for tonight. As you lie there, staring at the cracked ceiling, you reflect on all that you've seen. This tavern, grimy, loud, sometimes dangerous, is a strange mirror of the world outside. Compressed into a single room, merchants and beggars, knights and cutthroats, laughter and lies, fear and friendship. If you want to understand medieval life, you don't need a cathedral or a castle. You need a night in a place like this.
And maybe in the morning, you'll rise before the sun, wash with freezing water, and be gone before the innkeeper even sees you. Or maybe you'll linger. Maybe there's something here worth staying for. One more tale, one more gamble, one more drink. A life can take root in stranger soil. Either way, when the fire finally dies and your eyes slip shut, the tavern wraps itself around you like an old friend. Not gentle, not always kind, but real. And in this harsh, hungry world, that's more than most could ask for.